All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling a question that's fascinated people for, well, forever. What exactly is human connection on a scientific level? We're going to explore some really groundbreaking research that suggests our brains can actually sync up with each other, creating a literal vibe that, believe it or not, we can now measure. You know that feeling, right? That moment when you're talking to someone and you both just click. You get it. No more words needed. Or when you walk into a room and you can just feel the energy, the mood, instantly. So, what if that vibe isn't just some metaphor we use? What if it's a real, physical, measurable thing that's happening between our brains? That is the exact mystery we're going to unpack, moving this whole idea from a gut feeling into the world of hard data. So, how in the world did we get from this vague sense of connection to a phenomenon that scientists can actually measure? Well, to really get this new science, we have to take a quick look back at how we've understood empathy over the years. For the longest time, empathy was just seen as this purely subjective thing, this abstract idea of walking in someone else's shoes. But science is totally flipping that script. We're now shifting away from just personal stories and moving toward quantifiable evidence, looking for the actual physical signature of connection in the brain. It's pretty cool. The word empathy actually comes from the German term Einfühlung, which literally means feeling into. It started as a psychological concept, but it perfectly sets the stage for what neuroscientists are finding out 100 years later. And here is our first piece of solid proof. Using fMRI scans, scientists have actually seen that when you watch someone else in pain, the parts of your brain that process pain, what they call your pain matrix, they light up too. It's like we have the hardware built right in to simulate what other people are experiencing. Okay, so if our brains are wired for empathy, how can we actually see it in action in real time? Well, that brings us to the brain's amazing electrical symphony and the incredible tool that lets us listen in. The electroencephalogram, or EEG for short, is basically our window into the mind. It records all that constant electrical chatter firing between our neurons, and it shows us the rhythms and patterns of our thoughts and feelings as these things called brainwaves. And this journey didn't just start yesterday. It really kicked off back in 1924 with the very first EEG recordings, which gave us our first peek inside the brain's electrical world. Then, fast forward to the 90s, we discover mirror neurons, the actual brain cells that let us mimic and understand people. And now we're seeing studies that link all this directly to real-world results, like how well students do in a classroom. Okay, so let's break down these brain waves, because this is super interesting. Think of your brain like it's playing music. You've got the super slow, deep beat of delta waves when you're in a deep sleep. Then you have theta waves, which are more like a chill, melodic rhythm when you're meditating or in a creative flow. Alpha waves are that calm, steady tempo of being relaxed but awake. And beta waves? That's the fast-paced, high-energy track of when you're really thinking and focused. Every state of mind has its own electrical signature. So that's the symphony happening inside one brain. But the really mind-blowing part is what happens when two brains start interacting. They actually start to sync up. This is the key idea right here. Interbrain synchrony. It's this incredible phenomenon where the brain waves of people who are talking or working together literally start to pulse in unison. They start oscillating at the same frequency, kind of like two tuning forks making each other vibrate. And how on earth is this possible? Well, a huge part of the puzzle is something called the mirror-neuron system. These are special brain cells that fire both when you do an action and when you see someone else do that same action. They're the biological reason you might wince when you see someone else fall. They're the foundation for mimicry. And you see this stuff happening in our lives every single day. When you and a friend share a good laugh, your relaxed alpha waves often sync up. When musicians play a duet, their brainwaves have to align to keep that perfect rhythm. Even when someone is just telling a story, the listener's brain activity actually starts to mirror the patterns of the speaker. It's amazing. So let's get to the climax of all this, because this all builds to a truly radical idea, the social aura. Is it possible that we're all walking around broadcasting our brain signature and that we can literally get on the same wavelength with other people? So here's the hypothesis. What if this brainwave synchronization is more than just mimicry? What if it's a measurable, quantifiable sign of a shared mental state, a kind of shared consciousness between two or more people? But is there any actual proof of this? You bet. This quote points to a game-changing study. researchers found a direct link between how in sync a teacher's brainwaves were with their students and how well those students actually did. The more in sync the classroom's brains were, the higher the grades. This is real data that suggests our vibe can have a huge impact on our ability to connect and learn. And this isn't some sci-fi movie concept. Scientists are actually gathering this data using a technique called hyperscanning. They're essentially hooking up multiple people to EEGs at the same time and measuring how their brainwaves align while they talk, solve problems, or just interact. So, the huge question is, what does all of this mean for us, for the future of how we learn, how we heal, and how we connect with each other? Well, the potential is just incredible. Imagine therapies that could help people with social anxiety actually learn how to sync up with others. Or think about optimizing teamwork for surgeons or engineers by helping them get into brainwave alignment, creating a sort of collaborative hive mind. This could fundamentally change our ability to connect with each other. When you really think about it, this science challenges the whole idea that we're just isolated individuals. It suggests that on a deep, neural level, we're constantly influencing and being influenced by the people around us, forming this vast, invisible, interconnected network. Which brings us right back to the beginning. If that vibe you feel with someone is real, if we can actually measure this social aura that connects us all, what does that really tell us about our shared humanity? What does it mean to be human? That is a pretty profound thought to leave you with.